You're listening to the Tom Kelly Show, the home of self-improvement and fun. My name is Tom Kelly. I'm fixing up my life so you don't have to. Is your life where you want it to be? No, of course it's not. So here's the deal. I'm a stand-up comedian. I've been on The View, Good Morning America, Headline News, America's Got Talent, and a bunch of other shows. And this, the Tom Kelly Show, is the podcast where we take the existential crisis and turn it into a renaissance. New episodes, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Check on your favorite podcast app, YouTube, or TomKellyShow.com. Across the board, I try to do new social content every day on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter as Tom Kelly Show. Go show love where love can be shown. But right now, let's start the show.
The Tom Kelly Show. Everybody, I want you to go to the Tom Kelly Show. I want you all to know about the Tom Kelly Show.
Trigger warning, spoiler alert, notify your next of kin. Who wants the podcast today? You're listening to the Tom Kelly Show. So much I want to talk about. Let's get right into it. Request from Ryan Wally. He wanted to know on our cliffhanger from the beach last week, where I think I was begging you all to start tagging Jennifer Garner when you share the Tom Kelly Show to see if we could get her on this podcast. In the middle of that episode, I got a text message from my friend Jeanette Barber, who said, Tom, I have an extra ticket to Hamilton. Do you want to see it? And I committed to you, audience. I finished the show before calling her back. I did cut the show a little bit short, but I committed to you people, finished the episode, and did make it to New York City in time to see Hamilton. And I had a fantastic time. So thank you to Jeanette Barber for inviting me to Hamilton. And thank you to all of the people over the weekend. Marianne, Judy, Christy, and there were a few others who asked, did I make it to Hamilton? I did. And thank you, Ryan, for reminding me to tell the crowd I had a great time. Yesterday's episode, where I expressed my support for the character and human being I know as Whoopi Goldberg, had to edit that show a few different times because I had a chunk on Joe Rogan in it. I recorded the podcast last Friday. Here's the challenge with podcasting lately. And it might be the challenge with broadcasting and recording any opinion nowadays. Is I would say I recorded the episode Friday, and I had one set of opinions about Joe Rogan related purely to the journalistic standards of the Joe Rogan experience, or whatever they call that program. And news broke on late Friday and early Saturday morning that there were videos of Joe Rogan using the N-word going viral. So here's the first problem with being an entertainer nowadays. If you have an opinion and it's recorded and the news changes, you could look like a real jerk. Like, I mean, listen, there's a lot of people out there who talk about how much they loved Bill Cosby, and geez, whatever you said about Bill Cosby in 2010 just doesn't hold up today, does it? You know, and that changes, in a minute. I could say, let me pick I'm trying to pick, like, I could say I like Mr. Rogers, and then it turns out, oh, Mr. Rogers murdered people. I don't even want to say it anymore. Like, I think that was the big thing about stuff I was thinking over the weekend. I kept re-editing the podcast I did yesterday and, making it shorter and shorter and shorter to make sure there was no opinions that could be taken the wrong way. And you know, I'm just a folksy stand-up comedian. And now there's going to be somebody saying, Tom, were you trying to do a Southern accent there? No, but I thought about it. Now I'm going to be getting hate mail from north of Florida, but south of Virginia. I feel like I owe you guys an opinion on Joe Rogan and the N-word, because I'm not a man who believes in cancel culture. I'm not a fan of Joe Rogan's work. Though I have tried to be a fan of Joe Rogan's work. I have a friend who gave me a Joe Rogan CD back in the early days of me doing stand-up, and when it was like a bootleg or a advanced copy of one of Joe Rogan's albums. And I'm like, his comedy is filthy. There was nothing that stood out to me. He speaks to the common man. He speaks to the more boorish of people I grew up with, whom I love, by the way. Remember, I grew up in a working class neighborhood with working people, the working man. And he speaks to the working man. Now, I believe it was India.re shared a video of him using the N-word 20 times. I will first share his apology, which I believe in and support. I know that to most people, there's no context where a white person is ever allowed to say that word, never mind publicly on a podcast. And I agree with that now. I haven't said it in years. It's not my word to use. I'm well aware of that now. Now, a couple of sticking points here before I have a crescendo on this Joe Rogan opinion. By the way, I'll be talking about happier stuff by the end of the show. So if you're here for Joe Rogan, hang on. And if you're here for Tom Kelly and what I learned in therapy today, I'll be there in a minute. Rogan first complained that his use of the N-word was taken out of context in that video. And I'm just going to say this. I watched clips of how he used it in context, and that's even worse. He didn't quite use it directed at a person, but the stupidity and hubris with which he used it is disappointing. Now, here's what I think about Joe Rogan. If my high school bully had a podcast, it would be called The Joe Rogan Experience. If my roofer and plumber had a podcast, it would be The Joe Rogan Experience. And I say that with friends in construction. It is a working man's podcast that speaks to the common man. But as Joe Rogan has become more popular than just a working man, he hasn't put energy into making himself smarter. He hasn't put energy into exercising simple journalistic practices when disseminating information. And the bigger you get, the more responsible you get. With great power comes great responsibility. How many Spider-Man movies do we need to learn that, people? And listen, I don't really listen to it. It's a dude cast. I'm not a dude. I don't have that male testosterone energy. There's a part of me that wishes I could be on that show. I really do. I wish I had enough dude testosterone. I'm not girly enough for The View, and I'm not manly enough for Joe Rogan. There lies the Tom Kelly Show. And I say this to friends here because I know we have a few, you know who you are, Fred, who might listen to Joe Rogan. I don't think you should be getting your news. I've expressed this opinion a lot lately. Where you get your news, you should not get your news from the Tom Kelly Show. Obviously, nobody is. But if I am terrified for a world where we get our news from the Joe Rogan Experience. Now, I'm also terrified of a world where we get our news from Jon Stewart and Trevor Noah. I'm terrified for a world where we get our news from Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, and Seth Meyers. And again, I repeat this. I am terrified that we are getting information just from Joe Rogan. People, there you go. And I grew up once. I don't even want to get into the N-word debate because I saw it used once when I was a kid. I saw it deflate someone when I was in the 8th grade. Deflate. You know, and if you saw the word used in the context I saw it used, you would never, ever, 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 ever want to say it. And I'm one of those people who thinks it should be banned altogether. I think the problem with the double standard of who can say it and who can't say it is there are idiots, Joe Rogan, who will hear one person say it and say, why can't I say it? And that's one of the contexts in which Joe Rogan used it. You know, don't say things in front of Joe Rogan that Joe Rogan might repeat. Treat him like a child. Say pizza instead. I'm done with unhappy news for at least the rest of this show. We're 11 minutes in. I'm done with unhappy stuff. There you go. That's my opinion. I hope that roped you in for the rest of the podcast. On to happy stuff. We are still allowed to annoy Jennifer Garner. If you want to get her on the podcast, tag her in any of my social content. Tag her and just say, would you appear on the Tom Kelly Show at Tom Kelly Show? And again, other thanks and thank yous. If you hear a guest on the show, let them know you heard them on my program and maybe share the link and get them to retweet it. And Brian, who am I thinking of? Jack Bird, who shares my podcast every day on Twitter. You share the link and also tag me and you tag Jennifer Garner. How ballsy is it of me to say to a guy who does me a favor every day that I've never met and say, could you also tag Jennifer Garner in that favor? A lot going on. So had a good day with Dr. Cheryl. By the way, Ryan Wally texted me during therapy on Instagram saying, hey, Tom, isn't today Dr. Cheryl Day? Yes, it was, Ryan. Yes, it was. And she had a great line that I kind of have been coming to about my career lately, which is instead of worrying about making the big money, let's worry about being of service. And right now, what I love about you guys who interact with me, and I'm talking to Jack Bird, I'm talking to Diane, I am talking to Mark Epstein, Andrew Garcia, Jimmy Schubert, all the people who have been sending me nice notes saying they listen, Josh Payne. Why don't we be of service to each other? Let's make this, again, this is self-help and fun, self-improvement and fun. Here we go. But Jimmy Schubert, one of my lifelong friends, had a great line when we were talking about society lately. Everybody thinks they're special. I mean, I miss the old grandmas of the 1970s. What makes you think you're special? Why are you so special? And I don't know how to make it a long segment, but what do you like? Everybody has something that everybody else does that they don't want to do, and they feel like they're special and don't have to. Like I don't like wearing the masks because they burn my eyes. My eyes are dry already. And et cetera, et cetera. So what makes me special? I'm an entertainer. I shouldn't have to. I don't want to wear a mask. What makes you so special? I'm a comedian. Not really working, but you get into it. There are people who bring their dogs into stores, and it drives me nuts in New York City because they're not all service dogs, people. They're not. And we're bringing dogs into places where I consume food. That's against the law. Everybody in Massapequa, Long Island, has a license plate cover so they don't get tickets. I don't want to pay my tickets. What makes you special? I don't know. Send me a note. maybe I'll, I don't even want to put it on to Instagram. See, that's, yeah, I don't even want to put it on Instagram because I don't want to deal with people's opinions. Like I just know everybody's going to take that and turn it into a big rant on COVID. I don't want to get a vaccine because I don't want the man to tell me what to do. It's so hard to friggin' entertain people right now. And I'm a man of talent. Let's go through some fun things here. Spirit Airlines has been purchased by Frontier Airlines for $2.9 billion in cash. But that price doesn't include luggage. I was listening to a podcast on fastcompany.com. Podcast is called Hit the Ground Running. And they asked, should I be friends with my coworkers? And one of the points on the podcast from Pavitra Mohan, I think I'm saying that right, and I apologize if I didn't. Mohan says, sometimes the only time you might know if someone at work is really your friend is if when you leave the job, do they stay in touch with you after? And I guess that's something I have found humbling during the pandemic and, leaving all these jobs I've left in the last couple of years is it's kind of heartbreaking to see who still calls you, who still hits like on this, that, or the other thing, who writes you the nice Facebook note. And that kind of drops off when you don't have the same daily common experiences. I think the real test of a work friend, though, isn't when you leave the job or they leave the job. It's when you both leave the job and you don't have the job to gossip about anymore. And then it just becomes, hey, let's talk about old times. We'll end with this. Actually, not to end on Black History Month, but why not? I found some quotes. They were rules for staying young from Leroy Satchel Paige. He was an American baseball player who pitched in the Negro Leagues and in Major League Baseball. He was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1971 and the first player from the Negro Leagues to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. Some of his tips for staying young. Avoid fried meats, which angry up the blood. If your stomach disputes you, lie down and pacify it with cool thoughts. Go light on the vices, such as carrying on society. The social ramble isn't restful. Geez, we kind of learned that one today. Avoid running at all times. And don't look back. Something might be gaining on you. That's the story, people. It's 11:30 at night. I'm going to do a quick edit of this. If you get a chance, the likes are coming in on the TikToks. Thank you for that. Friends, we are still annoying Jennifer Garner. If you feel like being on that train for another day or two, good shows coming up in the next couple of days. And until Wednesday, good night, New York.